The studio lights at the view gleamed brightly above the set, casting a soft glow on the polished table where the hosts gathered for the morning's hot topics. It was a typical Wednesday. A brisk chill hung in the New York air, and anticipation buzzed through the studio audience. But today was different. Keanu Reeves, the beloved actor known as much for his kindness as his on-screen prowess, was the special guest. Keanu had agreed to come on the show to promote a small indie film he had quietly executive produced. A project about grief and second chances, subjects close to his heart. Despite his A-list status, he had remained humble, arriving early, greeting staff by name, even helping an intern carry coffee to the green room. As always, Keanu moved through life as if everyone mattered, and that simple truth radiated from him. But not everyone was impressed. At the host table sat Joy Behar, sharp-tongued and unfiltered, known for her fierce opinions. She respected celebrity, but only when it aligned with her worldview. And in Keanu, she saw someone too quiet, too reserved, maybe even too perfect. It rubbed her the wrong way. As the show began and the music faded, Whoopi Goldberg welcomed the audience and introduced Keanu to enthusiastic applause. Keanu smiled softly, gave a gentle wave, and took his seat beside Joy. The first few questions were polite and expected about his movie, his thoughts on art and grief, and why he chose to fund the project himself. Keanu responded thoughtfully, speaking not to impress but to connect. His voice was calm, his manner grounded. But then, just as the conversation settled into something meaningful, Joy leaned forward and broke the rhythm. "You know, Keanu," she said with a smirk, "you've got this monk-like reputation, stoic, silent, deep. But don't you think that's a bit of a PR move? I mean, come on. Nobody's that nice all the time." There was an awkward pause. Laughter flickered through the audience, uncertain. Keanu blinked slowly, unsure whether she was joking. He gave a soft laugh, trying to play along. "I just try to treat people how I'd want to be treated," he said gently. Joy leaned in. "But don't you think that's unrealistic? Life isn't a John Wick movie or some Zen philosophy. I mean, do you ever get mad? Yell at someone? Be real with us?" A hush fell over the room. The energy shifted. Keanu looked at her quietly, the corners of his eyes soft but focused. "Yes," he said after a pause. "I get angry. I felt heartbreak. I've lost people I loved. But I don't believe anger always has to be loud. And I don't think pain has to be public." Joy chuckled, crossing her arms. "Sounds like a line from a script." The moment hung in the air. Some in the audience cringed, others held their breath. Then Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice low but clear. "I once held my sister's hand through chemotherapy," he said. "Every day I would sit beside her in silence, because there was nothing to say that could make it easier. That silence was my way of being present. Years later, she told me that silence was the loudest love she ever felt. So no, I don't always shout. I listen, I stay, and I care." The studio was still. Joy blinked. Her smirk faded, replaced with something unfamiliar in certainty. Keanu continued, "Not everything needs to be performed. Some things like kindness, grief, or love are too sacred to turn into entertainment." The audience erupted into applause. Not wild, not dramatic, but a steady, emotional rise from people who had just witnessed something rare. A man speaking truth, not to win, but to heal. Even the crew behind the cameras stopped. One of the interns, who had been having a hard week after losing her grandmother, teared up. Joy, flustered, waved her hand. All right. Right. Moving on. But the moment couldn't be moved past. It lingered. Whoopi stepped in. "Keanu, thank you for that. That was needed." Keanu nodded humbly. "Thank you for listening." After the segment ended and the cameras went to commercial, Joy didn't say much, but she glanced at Keanu, then away. For the rest of the episode, her tone softened, not just toward him, but toward everyone. Backstage, the energy had changed. Producers approached Keanu to thank him for what he said. A cameraman who had worked in the industry for decades told him that was the most real moment I've seen on this set. The clip of the exchange went viral within hours, not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. People shared stories in the comments. "My brother passed away from leukemia, and this reminded me how powerful quiet support really is." Another wrote, "I was always loud with my emotions. This made me realize maybe I need to learn how to just be there." Even Joy, who had built her brand on snark, issued a rare tweet that evening. "Sometimes we all need a little reminder about grace." Thanks, Keanu. But for Keanu, it wasn't about going viral or making a point. It was about being real in a world that often rewards performance over presence. The sun had set by the time Keanu Reeves stepped out of the studio. The cool New York air brushed against his face, but the warmth of the day's events lingered with him. His team offered to arrange a car, but Keanu politely declined. Preferred to walk, he always had. Fame hadn't stripped him of the simple pleasure of a quiet stroll. As he crossed West 66th Street, he pulled out his phone. Dozens of notifications flooded his screen texts from friends, calls from journalists, clips going viral. His moment on The View had exploded into something far greater than he'd intended. He wasn't seeking attention. He just spoke from the heart. But the world had felt it. Back inside the studio, the atmosphere was still heavy. Joy Behar sat in her dressing room, staring at her reflection. She wasn't rattled often. She was used to hard-hitting interviews, debates, pushback. But something about Keanu's words stuck with her in a way she hadn't expected. She reached for her phone and saw the trending topic. #Keanu on The View. Below it were clips of his answer. People sharing personal stories. Even former guests referencing how they'd never seen such raw sincerity on live television. For the first time in years, Joy felt embarrassed. Not because she had challenged someone that was her job, but because she had done so without truly listening. And the person she had tried to poke holes in wasn't hiding behind a celebrity image. He was simply being himself. The next morning, Keanu sat in a quiet cafe in Brooklyn. He sipped a plain black coffee and scrolled through the messages. One caught his eye, a direct message from a woman named Maria. "Hi, Keanu. I watched you on The View yesterday. I'm a grief counselor, and I just want you to know your words helped a client of mine open up for the first time in months." "Thank you." He closed his eyes for a moment and smiled. This was why he did what he did. Not for headlines or applause, but for connection. For moments like this. Meanwhile, producers at The View were buzzing. The episode had drawn record numbers. Social media engagement had tripled. But more than the numbers, the emotional impact had left a lasting impression. People weren't just entertained. They were moved. Later that day, Keanu received a call. It was from a young man named David, a production assistant from the show. Nervous but earnest, he said, "Mr. Reeves, I don't know if you remember me, but I brought your tea to the green room. I just wanted to say thank you." Keanu chuckled gently. "Of course I remember you. You were wearing the Lakers hoodie, right?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, then laughter. "Yeah, that's me. Listen, I just your words yesterday. They helped me call my dad. We haven't spoken in 2 years. I told him I was sorry. He said he'd been waiting for that call." Keanu's voice softened. "I'm happy for you, man. I really am." Back at ABC, Joy was pacing. She had decided to reach out, not through an agent, not through PR, but directly. She wanted to apologize. Not for doing her job, but for forgetting that sometimes grace was more important than a punchline. She dialed. Keanu answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Keanu, it's Joy Behar." He didn't hesitate. "Hi, Joy. I just wanted to say I was out of line. You were a guest, and I should have treated you with more respect. What you said about your sister, about being present, it hit me hard. And I guess I wasn't ready for that on live TV." There was a moment of silence. Keanu replied, "Thank you, Joy. That means a lot. We all get caught up sometimes. What matters is that we learn from it." Joy exhaled. "You really are the real deal, huh?" He laughed. "Just trying to be." "Next time you're in the city," Joy said, "coffee's on me. No cameras, just a real conversation." "I'd like that," he replied. As the weeks went by, the story continued to ripple outward. People used clips of the interview in school discussions, grief workshops, and even corporate leadership training. What began as an awkward TV moment had turned into a powerful lesson in empathy and authenticity. One day, Keanu received a letter from a teenage girl named Eliza in Oregon. "Dear Mr. Reeves, I'm 16. My mom passed away last year, and I haven't really talked to anyone about it. I thought I had to stay strong, to be loud and happy, so my little brother didn't worry. But then I saw you on TV. When you talked about silence being a kind of love, I cried for the first time in months. And it felt good. Thank you for showing me that quiet is okay." And Keanu folded the letter and tucked it in his jacket pocket, carried it with him for days. A few months later, Keanu was invited back to The View. This time it was different. He wasn't there to promote anything. The show wanted to host a conversation about emotional intelligence, grief, and how media personalities can influence cultural healing. It was a bold move, but the world was ready for it. He walked onto the stage, and this time Joy met him with a warm hug. "You ready to be the therapist of daytime TV?" she joked. He laughed. "Only if you promise to be my co-host." They both sat, and over the next hour, they had one of the most meaningful conversations in the show's history. It wasn't about ratings anymore. It was about truth. And when the show ended, when the applause faded, and the cameras turned off, the audience didn't rush out the door. They lingered, talking, hugging, sharing stories with strangers. Something had shifted. Keanu Reeves hadn't just changed the atmosphere of a TV set. He had reminded people, millions of people, what it means to be present, what it means to truly see one another. And he did it all, not with a shout, but with a wisp.